but comes through continuous struggle. 1 week ago today, January 6, 2021, America, the world, experienced and watched a thought-provoking, supercharged emotional assembly that left us speechless and caused change in our thoughts, our actions, and our reactions. As I thought about this, I wondered what would Dr. King's reaction have been, since he promoted peaceful protests for change. This is a pivotal moment for self-reflection. What are your thoughts? Will you take the time to self-reflect on the change? That change that you can make, the change that you will make, the change that you must make, the change that must be reflected in you. Now is the time for change. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? My name is Marissa Baker. I will serve as your mistress of ceremonies today for the 17th annual Mlk Celebration event. When we held our 16th event, we never thought that our 17th celebration would take us here to a virtual format, but here we are today. Today's program will be recorded. We ask that you use the chat and reaction icons to reflect your thoughts throughout the program. You are muted. We ask that the program participants, when it's your turn to speak, if you'll unmute yourself after you've shared with the audience, we ask that you then again mute yourself. Now, without further ado, I'd like to bring to you someone to share the welcome for today's celebration. It's our illustrious, forward-thinking, outstanding, fearless leader of the Polk State College, Dr. Angela Garcia Falconetti. Will you join me in giving Dr. Falconetti a round of applause as she comes forward to share with you the welcome, and she'll also be introducing our Congressman Soto. So Dr. Falconetti, please.
Well, thank you so much for that warm introduction, Val, and I appreciate being illustrious. I'd like to share with all of you, and in Val's mind anyway, I'd like to share with you that I really appreciate the title of this year's MLK Luncheon, Chaos or Community. And as Polk State College's president, I'd like to share with you that I prefer not chaos. I prefer the community. So again, I want to thank you for joining us in a different manner this year. And just as a reminder, if you could mute your line, if you wouldn't mind, so that we can ensure better communication throughout this Zoom session. I do want to thank you for joining us virtually. It's a real treat to continue the celebration of Martin Luther King, Dr. King, with you, even though we are not together in person as a result of the national health emergency, of course, COVID-19. I'm not going to take too long because I know we have many people on the line today who not only are giving of their time, but I also know that Congressman Soto is already here with us. And I'm going to take the time not to what my good colleague, Vice President of Student Services here, Reggie Webb, would say to me, which is preach. He'd say, preach, Dr. Falconetti, preach. I'm not going to preach today. But I do want to leave you with a quote by Dr. King that I know each of you have heard. So many inspirational sayings, and it is, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I would like for you to know that at Polk State College, my goal as the college's president and leader in this very wonderful community of Polk County is to ensure that our students are educated and that they feel that they have the right to express their voices in a peaceful manner and yet in a strong manner, and that we are supportive together to ensure that our students are educated and are good citizens in this county, embracing diversity at every level and fighting and ensuring that they understand that as a community together, we can combat any kind of chaos if we pull together and really focus on, you know, all of the goodness that each of us have to offer. So I do need to, though, quickly thank, of course, Marissa Baker, who is in charge of our Office of Diversity and Equity and Inclusion. She now serves as our Chief Diversity Officer for the college. Although she's been in that role, she has had a nice little title change to ensure that the role continues to be very prevalent at our college as she's assumed additional responsibilities. I'd also like to thank Dr. Earl Brown, who's our professor of English and speech communication, who will be speaking with us today. Marissa Green, who's a dear friend of the college and has been just absolutely lovely to me since I began my tenure here at the college. Thank you, Marissa, for both of the roles that you've played. She's communications analyst for Polk County Public Schools. And Valerie Walker, who's presiding elder of the Orlando District African Methodist Episcopal Church. Thank you so much for everything that you do for our community, but also for being here with us today. I'm really excited to hear their perspectives and know that we may have many elected officials on the Zoom today, so I hope that each of you know that we're grateful for your service. I see just on one of the multiple screens we have here, Mayor Pro Tem Nat Birdsong from Winter Haven, thank you so much. But I do see several others of you. Thank you for the service that you continue to provide for the citizens of our county. I have the distinct pleasure, and it really is not just a pleasure, it's an honor, to introduce someone who I would like to call a friend, our U.S. Representative Darren Soto, who actually reached out to us and asked if he could be a part of our agenda today. How amazing is that, that we didn't need to reach out to Congressman Soto, that he contacted Polk State College and asked if he could make a few comments during this very important event at our institution. I have found in my tenure here that there has been no one, and I want to put this on the table for all of us because national politics are politics, and I've always been told don't talk about it, but I want to say something very important. Regardless of your political affiliation, it's important to know when you have someone who's a good-hearted individual and is out for everyone and the good of everyone. And I can share with you that I have never worked with a representative that has a U.S. representative who has been as caring and as involved in their community as U.S. Congressman Darren Soto. And I don't say that because he provided me with a recognition last year during the Women's History Month. So I say it because it comes from my heart. So Congressman Soto, thank you for everything you do, not only for our state, but our country, and for one of your local colleges. I can't express to you, I feel how very grateful I am. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that Leah is just in Congressman Soto's office here locally, is just a gem and a very critical part of our community. Again, that's Leah West, excuse me. Thank you, Congressman Soto.
Thank you, Dr. Falconetti, for your leadership and the leadership of the Polk State Board during the trying coronavirus challenges that we faced over the last year. We appreciate your leadership, and we are so proud of all of our students at Polk State for continuing their education, even facing such obstacles. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Stated, I quote, "The arc of moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." We saw Dr. King, along with other African-American leaders throughout the nation, particularly in the South, lead the 1960s civil rights movement. And we know he faced great danger that ultimately led to his assassination. With the protests after the death of George Floyd, the NAACP, Black Lives Matter, and others, we see again folks taking up the call for equality. We also see we remain in challenging times with a violent insurrection on the Capitol. In these times, the arc of history still bends towards justice. My brothers and sisters at Polk State. Next week, we swear in the first woman, the first African-American, Kamala Harris, as the next Vice President of the United States. So we see amazing reforms happening, even as we know we face great challenges. Justice reforms will be a key part of the Biden administration. Many suggestions have been given by many of your students, as well as folks throughout our district, and we will work to make sure that every American is equal under the law and protected. Dr. Martin Luther King, we all know, was integral in passage of the Civil Rights Acts of the early 1960s. King spoke on the steps of President Abraham Lincoln's memorial, where he delivered his historic "I Have a Dream" speech. One of his most famous lines being, "I have a dream that one day, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers." And of course, King's actions helped pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964 the law that ended this legal separation of people by race in public places. The act also banned job discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, and national origin. And Dr. King was present when it was signed into law. And I want to bring it home to Polk County now in this moment, because right after the 1964 law was passed, it helped usher amazing change in Polk County. I want you to all remember the name Althea Margaret Daly Mills. Miss Mills was raised in Polk County, educated up north, and returned back with her family in the early 1960s. And she was appalled at the lack of resources at Polk County segregated schools at that time. So she filed litigation to desegregate Polk County schools in 1963. And then, of course, with the enactment of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, that strengthened her cause of action. And on March 16th, 1965, we saw a court order that forced the Polk County Board of Public Instruction, now the school board, to eliminate segregated school zones and allow free choice, giving the district until 1969 to implement those changes. She later became the first African-American postal worker in Polk County, working in Winter Haven, Florida. And as we talk about this arc of justice, bending towards justice, I'm honored to announce that we passed legislation renaming the Winter Haven Post Office just this last month at the very end of session, the post office in Florence Villa in Winter Haven, after Miss Althea Margaret Daly Mills, someone who was on the front lines along with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in making our district and Polk County a more equal place. I want to end by urging you all to continue the lessons and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Be bold, be brave, be peaceful in your actions. Take up the banner of justice for all Americans, because each generation will have to protect and defend equality for all Americans. And I couldn't be prouder of all of you at Polk State for how you've conducted yourselves, utilized your First Amendment rights, and made sure to make your voices heard. Today we celebrate, and over the course of this weekend into Monday, and every day, the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Be the change that you want to be the justice that our nation needs. And thank you everybody for having me. Thank you again, Dr. Falconetti and the board, for this opportunity.
Go ahead, Dr. Falconetti.
Oh, no, thank you. I was just going to say thank you, Congressman Soto, for your continued service and for all that you do for our community.
It's my honor.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to both Dr. Falconetti and Congressman Soto. Thank you again so very much. As we move forward within the program, I have to deviate for just one moment because we have a special guest that's joined us, and she can only be with us for a short amount of time, and that's Nixa Cruz DeWitt. Nixa was once a part of our department, and she joined us all the way from North Carolina just to share with us and support us. And I'm sure she remembers back in the day when she was on the other side getting things together. So Nixa, we're happy to have you join us, even though you're only with us for a short amount of time. We thank you so much for joining us. All right, let's move forward and continue with the program. And we are here to speak about our scholarship program, the Dream the Dream. The MLK Dream the Dream Scholarship came to life through a partnership between the Polk State College Foundation and the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. That partnership continues today and ensures deserving students are provided the opportunity to apply for scholarships. Each year, 2 students receive a $500 scholarship. That's why we thank you so much for your donations to the scholarship fund, and we encourage you to continue to do that as well. And certainly feel free to reach out to the foundation webpage to make that donation. Again, we certainly want to thank the foundation and their leadership team under the leadership of the interim executive director, Cindy Baker. We certainly want to thank our community sponsor, Tinsley Family Concession. They have been with us from the very beginning of our celebration. And of course, we thank many of you who have donated to make sure that this scholarship fund continues to provide an opportunity for recipients to move forward to dreaming their dreams. I certainly want to thank the Mlk Selection Committee. They don't have an easy task before them. And it's 3 members. They are part of the Mlk committee themselves. And it's Noreen Weber, Kimberly Pearsall, and David Woodward. They do a fantastic job. And so the scholarship recipients for this time you see on the screen, Nehemiah Charles. He's all Polk-tastic, as you can see, representing Polk State College. And you see we pulled an excerpt from his essay. It was a lengthy essay. We just pulled an excerpt. And one of the things he says is the notion behind having movements is in order to promote an idea that would level the playing field for all Americans that have shown that anything is possible if you're willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears to see it to take effect. And this is Nehemiah Charles. Our next scholarship recipient, and I'm not sure if Nehemiah is here with us. I did remember seeing Petal, and that's Petal McKinley, and she's with us. I saw her a moment ago, and she's our second scholarship recipient. And one of the things she shared with us in her excerpt, and she said, even though the aspirations of Dr. King's have not come to full fruition, we can take solace in the fact that it is up to our generation and our children's generation to dream the dream and make it a reality. Let's give a round of applause to both of the scholarship recipients. Quietly, right? Of course, at Polk State College, we have many talented students that have journeyed through our institution. One of them is our next program participant, Mr. Ryan Frazier, who shared with us previously during an MLK celebration. As I spoke with Ryan earlier to share with him that we would be having an encore performance of his presentation that he shared with us, he simply said to me, he said, I was honored and humbled that you're using my presentation to share today. I regret that I will not be able to join you because he has to work. And work is important too. But he certainly was humbled that we've given him that opportunity. So Isabel, I'll ask that you bring up and share Ryan's presentation with us. Thank you.
Dreams could talk. What would yours say about you? Would it be dreams of a better world like Martin Luther King, or would it speak so boldly of negative things that you're probably glad is something the human eyes can't see? They say dream big, but is your dream big enough that it seems far-fetched? Or is it big enough to be fulfilled? Because his dream seemed far-fetched until it started to become fulfilled. And for some, that balance just doesn't make sense. But in order for your dream to become a reality, you have to speak it into existence. Even when fear, negativity, doubt, and hatred are somewhere lingering in the distance. I dare you to dream when you're awake, because the reality of your dream could change the world without ever altering its shape. Let freedom ring, let freedom ring, let freedom ring was a constant echo of his dream. But for a second, I'd like to talk about my dream. A dream to let freedom of speech and expression ring so loudly that it pierces your heart and allows you to feel new things. I dream. Standing boldly on hope, because I carry a vision that the world may not give much clarity to. I dream. Because it takes a special person to stand out, although anyone can be outstanding. I dream. Because if I don't, I suffocate my potential, and life makes it hard to breathe. I dream. Because there are no terms and conditions, I set the standards for my life. I dream. Because without it, I wake up without a purpose. And although I'm alive, I would never have lived a day of my life. I dream. Because the best things in life are free. And yes, dreams are free, but the moment your dream becomes a reality, that's when it becomes priceless. So again, I ask, if dreams could talk, what would yours say about you? But dreams can talk, so the better question is, when will you wake up and decide to let your dreams speak?
Ryan Frazier. Nothing more can be said. An awesome job. He did a fantastic job. And you can tell he spoke it from the heart. Now we continue with the program. It's my pleasure to introduce the speakers that will join us today. We have a medley of 3 speakers that will share with us in their unique perspectives. I ask that you use the chat and the reaction keys for sharing your comments and your thoughts. I will take the time to introduce each of the speakers all at once, and after I've completed the introductions, the 3 introductions, the first speaker will share with you. Miss Marissa Green. She is a communication analyst for Polk County Public Schools. She spent 13 years working with the Ledger as a reporter, covering stories ranging from education to crime. She is certainly noted for her coverage of slain lottery winner Abraham Shakespeare, which afforded her the opportunity to make appearances on a number of television shows, and she's also had her international debut as well. She's a strong supporter of education and the community. Finally, she is the founder of Queens of the Round Table, which is a peer mentoring leadership group for young ladies. Presiding Elder Valerie J. Walker. She's no stranger to leadership. She's not afraid to step up or step out. She is a native of Winter Haven. For 17 years, she served as an educator. She left the educational arena to accept her calling into the ministry full-time. She has accomplished much in her lifetime. I think one of the most notable is the fact that she was the first in a number of instances. She was the first female pastor for multiple congregations. And in September 2014, she was the first appointed female presiding elder of the Orlando district of the Central Florida 11th Episcopal District of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Finally, she is the founder of the Women's Empowerment Ministry, New Beginnings to the Next Level. Personally, I think if Presiding Elder Walker and Ms. Green connect, they will have a powerful coalition of young women on the move, on the rise, to sit at the table and make a difference. Our final speaker will be Dr. Robert Earl Brown, who is no stranger to speaking, whether in the classroom or from the pulpit. He wears many hats: educator, author, speaker, preacher, personal coach, and trainer. He is a professor of English and speech communications here at the Polk State College. In his 17 years of coaching and training, he has trained thousands of leaders from the business, government, and educational arenas, as well as churches and nonprofit organizations. He has led coaching training organizations in more than 30 countries. He's a graduate of Lakeland's Focus on Leadership and Leadership Lakeland. Finally, he served for 24 years in the U.S. Navy. We thank him for his service. Ms. Green, you're on.
Although I wasn't there, I remember. I remember the hands that picked the cotton, tended to the fields, and cooked the Sunday dinner. I remember the slashes across the back that bled with anger and festered with fear. I remember the voice which spoke of fables, preserving the culture and preached the word. I remember the faith that kept the soul going, the prayer flowing, and the promise of a better day. I remember the heart that loved unconditionally, compassionate for the ignorant, and bless the master anyway. I remember the first taste of freedom. Oh, how sweet it is. The Harlem Renaissance, the fight for integration. I have a dream is now a reality. I remember the struggle to get me where I am today so that I could become an equal and stand proud, not ashamed. So you say I wasn't there, but I remember. To Ms. Val Baker, Dr. Angela Falconetti, my fellow guest speakers, and the Zoom audience, thank you for allowing me to share in this virtual celebration, to remember a man who stood for equality and unity. As I sat with my thoughts in preparation for this occasion, I thought about what I could say that would resonate with the participants. My thoughts took me back when I wrote the poem, I Remember. I was an adolescent in high school when I wrote it in honor of Black History Month. My Black history makes me a proud Black woman. I'm proud to be the great-granddaughter of a hardworking, respected man who had to drop out of the 4th grade to pick cotton in South Carolina to take care of his family. I'm proud to be a native of Daytona Beach, Florida, where I gained appreciation of growing up in a town where I had friends who accepted me for the content of my character and not reject me for the color of my skin. Proud to be distinguished graduate of a historically Black college, Florida A&M University, where my career was shaped and my dreams were birthed. Most importantly, I'm proud to be living some of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. In Dr. King's speech, he cleverly outlined a roadmap of where we go from here. He details how we are to avoid chaos for the sake of community. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. Dr. King stated in his speech, with this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day, he continues. King dreamed of a world where all God's children, Black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands. But somehow we let those hands go. We have lost our way. We were thrusted in chaos in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd. We were mortified by chaos on our television screens as we watched the Capitol, our nation's symbol of democracy, be breached by insurrectionists. Heightened divisions waved the flames of racism, riots, shooting, looting, violence, destruction of congressional chambers, and racial epithets. This is chaos. It is chaos when promotion doesn't come. It is chaos when mentoring doesn't happen. It is chaos to be hated simply for the skin you were born in. It is chaos not to have a seat at the table, and it is chaos to be the only one who looks like you in the room. As the aunt of 4 little Black boys, I am in pain. As the niece and cousin of 2 law enforcement officers, I am in pain. But hold on, there is hope. Unlike King, I have tasted that glimmer of his dream. Every time I raise money to help the least among us, people of all races answer my call. This is community. When social distancing left this single Black woman alone at home, my little white babies came by to deck my halls and strategically position my purple Christmas tree. This is community. When I need to get away from my white sister kidnapped me for a weekend excursion at the historic Vinoy Hotel and an 80s concert. This is community. When my older brother died more than a decade ago, my white colleague dropped what he was doing and drove me 2 hours home to be with my family. This is community. When one of my white children sold me a cape so I can wear it to represent a symbol of hope and unity, this is community. When all the Zoom participants of this call makes a donation to Polk State's MLK Fund so students of color can step through the doorway of education, this is community. And I want to acknowledge this donation that school board member Sarah Fortney dropped by for this program today. When the first Black man is elected student body president in Harvard University's 384th history, this is community. When we realize all men are created equal, We all have an equal right to education, job opportunities, housing, and representation from our politicians. This is community. When we no longer have to say the first Black, the first Hispanic, the first Asian, mayor, city manager, superintendent of schools, and hire a second, third, and fourth person of color in a high-profile role becomes commonplace. This is community. When a former gang member can rise up with the right support to become a physical education teacher and later the state of Missouri's 2020 Teacher of the Year, this is community. Community is when we walk in unison and be there for one another. Dr. King wanted simply the Black man and woman to be treated equitably, like human beings, like American citizens, protected under the same rights of the Constitution as others. Community is not forgetting the past, appreciating strides of the present, and forging ahead with love in the future. Polk County, we can get there with the power of community. The dictionary defines leaders as the person who leads or commands a group, organization, or country. And let me throw in county. To our elected leaders of Polk, I need you to come closer to the computer screen. You have the power to create chaos or community. You don't represent some of the people, you represent all the people. If you respect Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream for a more harmonious society, then every word that leaves your lips should make all residents here feel safe, feel heard, and feel included. King T'Challa said in the Black Panther movie that we must be an example as brothers and sisters on how we should treat one another. He went on to say that more connects us than separates us. In times of crisis, the wise build bridges and the foolish build barriers. We must find a way to look after one another as if we are one tribe. This has become one of my favorite monologues from this film. This is what King T'Challa, AKA Chadwick Boseman, wanted and what Dr. King dreamed about for our nation. We can live in chaos or live united for community. The choice is yours. Thank you.
To our illustrious, empowering leader, President Dr. Angela Garcia Falconetti, to my wonderful, dedicated, faithful, good friend, a great asset, Chief Diversity Officer, Sister Marissa Baker, to my fellow keynote speakers, to all clergy, government officials, faculty, staff, students, family, and friends. It is indeed a glorious honor to be with you today. Amos 5:24 states, "But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream." Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., an ambassador of peace, a drum major for justice, civil rights leader, leading advocate of nonviolence, Nobel Peace Prize recipient, Man of the Year by Time Magazine, founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, courageous man of God, pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and an inspiring author, who in 1967 wrote the book that posed the question, where do we go from here? And here we are 53 years later with the same relevant question, where do we go from here? In light of what has happened the last 53 years, particularly the last 4 years, and Wednesday, January the 6th of this year, it appears the alarming answer would be chaos. But just like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I bring you a message of faith and hope in the midst of chaos. challenges, changes, crime, corruption, and COVID-19, but I invite you to know along with me today that God still blesses America. As we reflect, remember, and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., yes, the world is ever changing. Yes, there is evil all around us. Yes, we see darkness, but the greater focus, the greatest thoughts, the greatest hope, and the greatest faith is God is still in control. The time is right to do what is right because the struggle is not over. Yes, we have triumphed over mountains, been lifted out of valleys, crossed lengthy rivers, but the struggle is not complete. We still have many miles to travel until we get to the promised land. Dr. King's dream of the beloved community will become a reality in the midst of coronavirus, virtual services, savings depleted, bills mounting, evictions, cancellations, riots, police brutality, graveside services, a spiraling economy, and a divided house. I still have a dream that we will reach the beloved community. Dr. King's beloved community is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, we are here today to know that it is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. Dr. King's beloved community lets us know that there shall be no poverty, hunger, or homelessness will not be tolerated. International standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. Today, we are joined together in sisterhood and in brotherhood from all walks of life. Together, we can create, and we are creating that community where all races, all denominations, all genders, and all social classes are willing to embrace our democracy, get out and vote, make our contributions to society, lend a helping hand, and stand together, heart to heart, mind to mind, with strong convictions, sharing common attitudes, common values, common interests, and common goals, and we can proclaim together, even in the midst of chaos, together we can answer the question, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? With a loud, heartfelt, determined, powerful voice, our answer is community. Community, where I see you and you see me. I care for you and you care for me. John Lewis stated it this way: not one of us can rest, be happy, be at home, be at peace with ourselves until we end hatred and division. So my brothers and sisters today who have gathered from all walks of life, all perfections, all colored skins, all races, all of everything that the Lord has blessed us with, for all of us who have come together, let us purpose in our hearts to pray together, to walk together, to stand together for all people, for human decency, for righteousness, for our nation, and not for a person or a political party, but united carrying the torch of equality and freedom for all, united as one. The hands are already turning. Can't you see us united? On January 20th, there is hope. There is peace. There is a new direction. There is a new day. And I believe if we stand together as one, we can all embrace the pledge of allegiance of the flag in the hearts of all Americans that says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one, somebody ought to say, one nation under God, indivisible, which means it cannot be divided, with liberty and justice for all. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. And God bless America. Our answer is community.
April 3rd, 1968. All day I was begging, crying, and pleading to go to the meeting to hear Dr. King, but did not because of the massive storm. April 4th, 1968. All day I acted with great anticipation. Then came grave, destructive disappointment. Even disappointment and frustration in myself for my destructive behavior after 7 p.m. that night. You see, my grandfather was one of those Memphis sanitation workers for whom Dr. King gave his life. To everyone on the call, particularly acknowledging Dr. Falconetti, Val, who invited me, thank you for giving me this opportunity. But because Dr. King gave his life for my grandfather, and because he's one of my greatest historical mentors, today I must honor him by seeking to use his own words to speak about a country at the crossroads of chaos or community. Doctors David McMillan and David Chavis took two clinical community psychologists from Vanderbilt University in an article published in the Journal of Community Psychology in 1986, stated, "It is clear that sense of community is a powerful force in our culture now. This force does not operate just for good, however. In the South, the Ku Klux Klan is gaining in membership and power. Urban vigilante forces are forming to attack and intimidate people in the name of community. Neighborhoods advertised as exclusive communities are fencing themselves in to keep out people who do not belong and to separate themselves from poverty and problems of social justice. As this force of community drives people closer together, it also seems to be polarizing and separating people, subgroups of people. The potential for great social conflict is increasing. Somehow, we must find a way to build communities that are based on faith, hope, and tolerance, rather than on fear, hatred, and rigidity," end quote. Consequently, today we must stop saying this is not who we are. This is who we are, and we must own this schizophrenic personality of our nation. The conversation concerning the incitement to insurrection by a sitting president and others is not the disease-removing conversation that is needed. We are seeing the harvest of what has been fomenting for decades. It is rooted in our collective failure to acknowledge and courageously confront the truth concerning the cancerous intersectional diseases of race, class, and gender, diseases that permeate the economic, political, and religious systems of our nation. Consequently, I will seek very quickly to inform our current dangerous and deadly situation with just a few comments from Dr. King's prophetic book. First, Dr. King says rationalizations and the incessant search for scapegoats are the psychological cataracts that blind us to our individual and collective sins. But the day has passed for blind euphemisms. He who lives with untruth lives in spiritual slavery. Freedom is still the bonus we receive for knowing the truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Unfortunately, just over a decade ago, in the midst of an already crumbling sense of community, we thought we were entering a post-racial America However, the nation was infected with the great lie of birtherism to delegitimize the first African-American president. This was compounded by the drumbeat of scapegoating brown people and immigrants as responsible for what is being caused by massive global and technological changes, combined with the failure of our education system and political policies to keep pace with these radical changes. Dr. King warned us in his 1963 book, Strength to Love. He warned this nation that to march toward their beloved community, we need people with a tough mind and a tender heart. A person with a tough mind possesses critical thinking and critical literacy skills. He said, and I quote, rarely do we find men who willingly engage in hard, solid thinking. There is almost a universal quest for easy answers and half-baked solutions. Nothing pains some people more than having to think. Our minds are constantly being invaded by legions of half-truths, prejudices, and false facts. One of the great needs of mankind is to be lifted above the morass of false propaganda, end quote. Plus, in his 1967 book, Dr. King warned of the dangers of technology as it plays an increasing role in communication. He could not imagine the role of social media in our lives today to proliferate lies, misinformation, and propaganda. There are some who say that lies spread on social media 6 times faster than the truth. In warning us in 1963 of the grave need for tough-mindedness, Dr. King quotes Adolf Hitler, who said, "I use emotion for the many and reserve reason for the few." By means of shrewd lies, unremittedly repeated, it is possible to make people believe that heaven is hell and hell heaven. The greater the lie, the more readily will it be believed, end quote. Sadly, many purveyors of lies, scapegoating in us versus them, rationalizations have been sanctioned and given great authority by the forces of economics, politics, and religion, the 3 major powers that fuel and shape society for good or evil. Second, Dr. King said, throughout our history, laws affirming African-American rights have consistently been circumvented by ingenious evasions which render them void in practice. There's a tragic gulf between civil rights laws passed and civil rights laws implemented. There's a double standard in the enforcement of law and a double standard in the respect for particular laws. With all her dazzling achievements and stupendous material strides, America has maintained its strange ambivalence on the question of racial justice. We see it in education, voting, criminal justice, policing, and more. It was on vivid display on January 6, 2021 at the nation's capital. Still, the most important one of these is education that serves to maintain these diseases on life support and has created a school to prison pipeline. Dr. King says that whatever pathology may exist in African-American families is far exceeded by this social pathology in the school system that refuses to accept the responsibility that no one else can bear and then scapegoats African-American families for failing to do the job. Family life explains only a portion of learning difficulties. The job of the school is to teach so well that family background is no longer an issue, end quote. That is, education rightly served has the power to equip any person to overcome her or his environment. Thirdly, Dr. King says racism is no mere American phenomenon. In fact, racism and its perennial ally, economic exploitation, provide the key to understanding most of the international complications of this generation. Racism can well be that corrosive evil that will bring down the curtain on Western civilization. If Western civilization does not now respond constructively to the challenge to banish racism, some future historians will have to say that a great civilization died because it lacked the soul and the commitment to make justice a reality for all people. There is no deficit in human resources. The deficit is in human will, end quote. In this moment as a country, we must engage our courage and our will to live the pledge, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Current events tell us we must not take Dr. King's words lightly. One only need think tough-mindedly about the murder of George Floyd in broad daylight, while he and others pleaded for his life. Then the ensuing spontaneous protests that erupted around the world. Fourth, Dr. King says that the stability of the large world house, which is ours, will involve a revolution of values. We must rapidly begin to shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, materialism, and materialism are incapable of being conquered. A civilization can flounder as readily in the face of moral and spiritual bankruptcy as it can through financial bankruptcy, end quote. Of course, the COVID crisis has highlighted this thing versus person value system and the devastating inequalities related to race, class, and gender. The National Defense Authorization Act has been passed year after year with little to no dissent for 59 years, spending more and more money every year. But Dr. King says, a nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death, end quote. The current chaos created through lies, propaganda, and scapegoating is merely a symptom of our nation's misplaced priorities. For example, in Jesus' parable of the talents, this nation has never truly positioned itself to fully allow the unfettered growth and creativity of its one greatest talent. This parable teaches us that we are all created equal in our humanity. However, we are not all created equal in ability. Therefore, diversity is woven into the fabric of creation and is the one great talent of this country. History will hold America accountable if it continues to abuse and misuse its diverse wealth of talent because it chooses to worship the idols of diseased isms. Finally, Dr. King believed that the beloved community could only be achieved through the elixir of love. He said, when I speak of love, I'm speaking of that force which all of the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life. Love is the key that unlocks the door which leads to ultimate reality. This Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist belief about ultimate reality is beautifully summed up in the first epistle of St. John. Let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. If we love one another, God dwelleth in us, and his love is perfected in us. Today, on January 13, 2021, I need to repeat the words of Dr. McMillan and Dr. Chavis. The potential for great social conflict is increasing. Somehow, we must find a way to build communities that are based on faith, hope, and tolerance, rather than on fear, hatred, and rigidity. Hence, the words of Arnold Toynbee that are quoted near the end of Dr. King's book are relevant for a country at the crossroads of chaos or community. He said, love is the ultimate force that makes for the saving choice of life and good against the damning choices of death and evil. Therefore, the first hope in our inventory must be the hope that love is going to have the last word. So I say to each of you on Zoom and those who may hear this through recording, please stay safe, please stay well, but most importantly, please stay focused on faith, hope, and love. Thank you.
Let's give our speakers once again, all three, a round of applause, please. I'm sure by now each of you have taken the individual unique perspectives and taken a personal reflection on them, to think about them. We'll continue to leave the chat open for a while so that you can chime in with your comments as we move forward to the program. Many thanks again to Dr. Falconetti, the MLK committee, the program participants, SALO, our foundation, our Office of Communication and Public Affairs, certainly our community sponsor, Congressman Soto, and to each of you. And certainly a special thank you to Isabel Malave. She's done an excellent job in wearing multiple hats. So let's give her a round of applause as well. Thank you. I want to say to you, and certainly I want to acknowledge my family. I do have family members listening in, and certainly we appreciate them joining us as well. We invite you to join us for a number of events that we'll have going on during our spring semester during the months of February, March, and April. So please stay tuned. We'll send out information to you and invite you to join us as well. As you know, this is one of the signature events that's led by the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And it's been my pleasure to share the last 17 celebrations with each of you. Some of you may be new, but many of you have returned, and it's been a pleasure doing that. And you've shared with us from the very beginning. And certainly I would be remiss if I did not express my appreciation to each of you. I want to certainly express my appreciation to the late Dr. Larry Durance, who accepted this idea and embraced it. Certainly Dr. Holden, who kept it moving forward within her tenure, and definitely to Dr. Falconetti, who continues to allow us to bring forth this celebration. We really appreciate you for that, Dr. Falconetti, and appreciate your continuing to embrace that vision for our MLK. Again, thank you for those 17 years that I've been able to share with you. As we approach the 18th year, I will certainly be exiting and handing the mantle to someone else to take over that leadership role. Whatever form, whatever mode that it's in, I certainly know that you all will continue to be supportive of the event, and because it will certainly be a most memorable one. And we know that you'll continue to support Polk State College and what the college has to offer. I leave you with these words that are penned by Congressman John Lewis. You are a light. You are the light. Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. Let your light shine. As we prepare for our finale of the program, which will end with our Black National Anthem, we thank you again so very much for joining us for the 17th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. virtual celebration. And we culminated with thanks to each of you. And a reminder, we will leave the chat going for a short amount of time if you have additional information that you would like to share. Isabel, if you will bring forth and bring on the national anthem. Thank you so very much.
Lift every voice and sing to the heaven. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the darkness has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. have felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady faith and an unweary feet, come to the place for which our parents sought. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading a path through the blood of the Son. Now from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is fast. God of the weary years, God of the silent tears, thou who hast known us the thou who hast by thy blood led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest thou free stray from the places of God where we met thee, lest thou hearts with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Again, we thank each of you for sharing with us and joining us. And certainly we'd like to acknowledge Sheriff Grady Judd, because we know he was on here with us. Grady, certainly we appreciate you so much, Sheriff Judd. We thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for allowing me to be with you today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Each of you have a wonderful Wednesday. Again, thank you so very much.